Hello, everyone. Greetings from early summer Hungary. My name is Judit Kis-Halas. Thank you for joining this lecture. I'm honored to be included in the BNN online lecture series. Today, I will be presenting on stories on the sources of power and knowledge, initiation narratives of wise women in Central Europe. Wise women as female experts of magic and healing have long been in the center of attention in the study of witchcraft and popular belief. According to the prevalent pre-modern magical religious worldview, the traces of which were still visible in the late 20th century European communities, they acquired their magical abilities either from supernatural entities, or they inherited them, or they were taught by a master. These abilities allegedly made them able to provide various magical services, frequently related to healing and midwifery, and ultimately assume the standing of mediators between the human world and the other world, or even take up the role of religious leader. In the context of present-day spirituality, wise women are not only believed to be attributed with supernatural power like their historical predecessors, but they are boasting of the magical forces they are harnessing. Consequently, their expertise of magic serves them as a form of symbolic capital, according to Pierre Bourdieu's theory, that can be exploited in order to gain economical and social benefits. In this respect, they seem to follow the traits of their historical predecessors. Nevertheless, since in our postmodern and highly secularized societies, magical knowledge is not considered illicit and morally evil anymore, they take on their extraordinary abilities far more openly and are more willing to talk about it. Even if their knowledge, the transcendent worlds they claim to connect with, and the methods they apply differ from the historical antecedent in many respects, the stories they tell on the origins and the character of their magical, supernatural knowledge, their initiation narratives, are often built on similar motifs. I placed the focus on the narrative repertoires of present-day spiritual or religious figures and highlight the processes, how these individuals create their identities as spiritual experts, either by the application of traditional belief or by inventing novelties, or even by both. The analysis also aims to reveal the ways how magical knowledge is presented in a spiritual community and how it is explored for marketing purposes. The inquiry puts belief about the acquisition of supernatural power and abilities in its center. It draws on data I previously collected by multi-site ethnographic fieldwork among various healing and esoteric practitioners in southwestern Hungary. The field of investigation incorporates virtual reality because my observations proved that the internet was not only the important arena of discourses on magical knowledge, but also the sphere of marketing one's magical or spiritual services. Here, I refer to the study of Cowan and Haddon, who consider the internet an important social context of communication on religion. They call it religion online, on the one hand. And on the other hand, it is the new side of religiosity, online religion. The present research is part of the Wise Women Project, which aims to explore the activity of female actors in the present-day spiritual milieu. The site of the investigation is the same geographical area as my previous field research, but this time I extended the boundaries towards Slovenia and Croatia. As far as the recent achievements are concerned, the unpredictable and wavering pandemic situation prevented me to start on-site research, both in Hungary and in the two other countries. Thus, it forced me to change my original plans. Due to travel restrictions and lockdowns, I had to switch to entirely online ethnographic research. In my original research plan, I selected some of those wise women with whom I have had a close cooperation during my previous fieldwork and who were willing to continue it with me. I kept on working with Zita, the healer masseuse from the village where I live. The interviews and discussions that we have been conducting for more than a decade form the basis of my first example. As As a second example, I have chosen Kea, who proved to be an outstanding and exceptional spiritual leader in Hungary now. She is an artist, holding a doctorate, and a charismatic female shaman living in a hamlet near Pécs. Still, she is not secluded in her country home, but she regularly travels to South America, mostly to Colombia, in order to keep in touch with her spiritual masters or to go for a pilgrimage. In addition, she is the founding mother of a nationwide spiritual movement of women called Concordancia Carpathiensis. It is a loose network of regional groups of variable members and followers, and there are also sympathizers who join to the group only temporarily. The movement aims to bring about spiritual and social changes by harmonizing the consciousness of the Carpathian Basin. It is put in the manifesto, and as it is suggested by the name. It intends to achieve it through cleansing and recharging the so-called power-laden sites, mostly geographical locations, with benevolent energies, by establishing transcendental connections with the supernatural spheres with the help of female shamanic power. Since I met Kea and 3 core members of the movement on the Zoom platform, during our conversation and especially the stories of their own spiritual experiences, also their reflections on the relationship with and the attitudes towards magic and spirituality form the second cluster in the present inquiry. Kea's manuscript that she made available to me as our acquaintance had somewhat deepened contains several narratives on her and the core members' visions, dreams, and supernatural encounters, all related to the acquisition of magical knowledge. Thirdly, I concentrate on 2 remarkable female spiritual figures from Slovenia, both seers of the dead and channels of the angelic realm. One of them is Anna Pogacnik, the daughter of the internationally known artist, author, and spiritual personality Marko Pogacnik, herself a successful author and the leader of an international spiritual network. Apart from our conversations, I had the choice to study her literary work, since she provided me with some of her recently published books, as Kea did. These volumes provide an insight on how expressions of belief are incorporated in a literary register of spiritual self-help. The 4th wise woman is the clairvoyant and best-selling author Kristiš Mahar, who is a recently emerged celebrity of the Slovenian spiritual scene. As my repeated attempts to contact her by email and other online channels failed, I could only passively observe and systematically document her activity in the virtual environment by subscribing to her newsletter. I received already more than 150 letters since last July. I also joined to her followers in social media. There are more than 36,000 followers. And regularly, I'm checking her website. Christy owns the most professionally designed and managed website, and she's the most active in social media among the 4 women. Before turning to our topic, a brief reference should be made on the spiritual milieus of present-day Hungary and Slovenia. At the beginning of the 1990s, the change of the political system in the Eastern and Central European countries brought religious pluralism into these societies. The invasion of new religions and religious spiritual ideas from the West reconfigured the previous landscape with never experienced rapidity. Within a decade, an eclectic and heterogeneous religious culture has emerged, blending, among many others, popular belief, lay and theological understandings of Christianity, several new religious movements, including charismatic Christianities, New Age religions, and further alternative spiritualities, such as neo-paganism and nationalistic native faith movements. In their 2005 research project on new religion in Slovenia, Aleš Trunic and Gregor Lesiak compiled a list of non-traditional religious groups and movements, and it consisted of 80 items, ranging from the Club of Angelic Christians to the Group of Universal Life. Although the Hungarian alternative spiritual milieu is not less colorful and wide, surveys about religious affiliation show that Christianity is still the dominant religion in Hungary. When she investigated the medical marketplace in Russia of the 1990s, Galina Lindqvist found that due to the new market mechanisms of post-Soviet transformation, magic offered an alternative means to earn a living to several people. She also refers to a 2001 survey carried out in St. Petersburg, which revealed the burgeoning of magical services marked by more than 50,000 registered tax-paying practitioners or service providers in the city. Larisa Jasharevich describes a similar boom of the magical market in post-Yugoslavian Bosnia during the 2000s in her respective monograph. The same applies to Hungary, as the 1999 and 2000 regional survey on alternative and complementary medicine has revealed it. During my previous research, I examined the contemporary Hungarian spiritual milieu from the medical point of view and observed not only religious but medical pluralism. I centered my attention at the various rural practitioners of alternative and complementary healing, who, when taking a closer look at their activities, turned out to be significant spiritual personalities in local contexts. Rita was one of them. She was the founder of and the vehicle behind local esoteric groups. She organized seminars and workshops, paid regular visits at the readings of gurus and leading spiritual personalities, or even invited them to her home to give a lecture there. She also propagated and distributed new teachings and ideas, first by homemade samizdat, and later through mailing lists. She recommended articles, books, films, and videos, both to her clients and the other group members. In all, her treatment room functioned not only as the site of healing and spiritual counseling, but of exchanging and producing knowledge within the gradually evolving local spiritual networks. Her prominent status is not the least due to her widespread reputation of mastering extraordinary abilities that she allegedly acquired from the supernatural realm. One of the most common themes of the local narrative repertoires with respect to her magical knowledge is that the source of her healing ability was in fact her own miraculous recovery. Rita's medical career started somewhat earlier, in 1995, when she finished her masseuse training and got a job at a nearby spa hospital. That time, she was suffering of several unknown illnesses, regularly received antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs in a high dose. I got drug poisoning of them, as she explained. One of her colleagues in the hospital recommended propolis to her, which proved to be helpful but did not bring recovery. 4 years later, she heard of Reiki, an alternative healing method of Japanese-American origin. It operates within the so-called human energy field and works through channeling healing universal energy by the laying on hands. Zita started to read on this topic, and when she learned that a Hare Krishna follower led a Reiki course in the nearby small town, she applied to it immediately. After treating herself successfully, she attended further courses and acquired the higher degrees of the healing method. By the year 2000, she became a licensed Reiki master, a healer and instructor. She received a certificate of an international Reiki organization, and from that time on, she was entitled not only to carry out Reiki treatment, but to teach and initiate her own disciples as well. The regaining of her health and the acquisition of the power to heal brought about a significant change in her attitude and lifestyle. First of all, she treated the ailments of the entire family, including her son's pet. He used to have dozens of parrots. Then she tried to cure the friends and the close acquaintances. By establishing her own medical practice at her home, she gave up her job at the spa hospital and full-heartedly turned to further alternative healing methods, such as herbal medicine, aromatherapy, Bach flower remedies, ear candling and cupping, just to mention some of them. She proudly told the stories both of her own recovery and of the successful healings of her friends and relatives, and established her massage practice where she offered Reiki as an optional treatment to her clients. When we first met in 2002, she was already considered a renowned healer and a founder and core member of several local esoteric groups, among them the Reiki Club, as it was called. While telling me about her first encounter with Reiki, she described the empirical experiences. She was talking about it as a kind of attunement, which is a term widely used in energy medicine, what she must have been learned from her readings. She repeatedly stressed the pleasant nature of the heat she was feeling during the treatment. Beside the bodily sensations, she emphasized the mental and spiritual aspect of the whole procedure and the change she herself underwent when she got healed. By becoming aware of her own healing ability, she also realized that she was able to control her whole life, including thoughts and feelings. When such things happen, one starts to see the world with a different eye, she said. I have learned that I had to meet no one's but my own expectations. Reiki heals both body and spirit. It is fantastic. The way of using medical metaphors for spiritual experience, as Zita did, has a long tradition in many cultures and religions. In his analysis of the traits of New Age religiosity, however, Wouter Hanegraaff underlines healing and personal growth as defining features. He also points to the similarities between the alternative healing methods of the New Age and the attitude of traditional popular medicine. He not only considers the holistic approach to be essential among them, but also emphasizes that both systems place the illness under a symbolic, fundamentally religious, spiritual interpretive framework. Unlike Western biomedicine, these interpretations do not simply consider illnesses as diseases, as biophysical facts, but as a physical and spiritual human experience. Thus, the physical and spiritual dimensions are also merged in the applied therapies, just like in Zita's case. During the decades that passed since her initiation to Reiki, Zita has developed a kind of constant awareness towards the spiritual dimension. For example, she has been monitoring her dreams for years. She took notes and then she regularly disclosed them to those friends who thought they would be able to interpret them. She was looking for signs and messages meant personally to her. There was a period when she was keen to gain extrasensory experiences, so that she attended several group meditations at various sacred sites in order to see something. However, she rarely had any sights, to her greatest disappointment. I am not a Tisztán látó because I cannot see anything, but I can feel the presence of beings instead. I'm a Tisztán érző, as she explained it. The firm belief in the existence of an other world, which is the source of knowledge and power, and from where messages can be conveyed by those who have the ability, is not difficult to discover in Zita's stories. Another theme strongly associated with the previous one is the acquisition of knowledge from supernatural beings in a dream, a vision, or while being in trance. This is the leading motive in chaos stories. In the present-day spiritual milieu, the practitioners of co-shamanism and the adherents of various kinds of native faith often claim to come into contact with the other world in trance or by visions. Kaya underwent several subsequent initiations by Peruvian, Ecuadorian, and Colombian shamans during the early 2000s, when she regularly traveled to these and several other South American countries for seeking spiritual inspiration. During these years, she not only became a professional urban shaman, but upon these experiences, she set about to create a synthesis of her unique views on what she called cultural morphology. Our first online discussion revealed a direct link between her activities and that of Anna Pogacnik, the Slovenian wise woman, more exactly, to the mystical art of Anna's father, Marko Pogacnik. His approach of combining artistic creation and universal healing by erecting statues at the so-called power-laden sites of Mother Earth, the process he called lithopuncture, is highly appreciated by Kea and served as a model for her own ambitions when she composed the spiritual program of her movement. Nevertheless, her initiatory visions have also been carefully incorporated into this narrative, and it is clearly visible in her writings. On her second journey to South America in 2002, she got acquainted with a Colombian shaman, Cayuya Tzamani, who was an ayahuasquero, by the way. He became her first master, who introduced her the use of ayahuasca, the psychoactive brew of the Amazonian and Andean indigenous people. The concoction is usually made from a kind of liane and other leaves, and it also may contain further ingredients. Originally, it has been used mainly for healing and divination by shamans and healers, but recently it has become a widespread drug in the United States. Let us just cite two initiation stories here by Kea. In the first ayahuasca ceremony of my life, pieces of soot like black matter left my body. It looked like shreds swimming out of me by each exhalation. By slowly hovering away, their texture felt soft like velvet. I was able to follow them with my gaze, even beyond the walls of the Maloka. Only the feeling remained that they were torn out of my body, and I was assured that I would not need them anymore. I was liberated, even if some may call it a mere hallucination. That night, I submerged into myself so deeply that I had never experienced before. Something, or probably everything, has changed in me. I had no difficulty at all in accepting the images conveyed by the ayahuasca brew. It has already made me experience that I had a knowledge that I did not even know about. I was most astonished by the botanical aspects of my initiation. First of all, that I was able to have a dialogue with a plant. It also stirred me that I was able to distinguish the different kinds of solianas, although I had seen only 5 of them previously, if I remember well. In addition, on that occasion, I looked at one of those, the scary culebra huasca, only from a distance. Despite the urge of the sorceress from Pasto, I refused to curse or take a revenge on someone by using it. During the past 5 years, Kea returned to Colombia several times with 2 of the core members of the group in order to help them in gaining their own transcendental experiences by the Soliana or the master plant. The latter term is a widespread synonym for ayahuasca and also a collective name for other psychoactive plants such as peyote and datura in the new spiritual neo-shamanic discourse. Kea and the core members have indeed read some of the respective ethnological and anthropological publications on these indigenous cultures, and they are also familiar with both South American and Hungarian neo-shamanic spiritualities. Furthermore, the Hungarian edition of Carlos Castañeda's bestseller is admittedly among their literary sources of inspiration. Still, they do not consider their ideas and ritual practice as a mere imitation. On the contrary, they describe their magical knowledge as an original and authentic one, the source of which is their own personal experience of a universal, ancient, and indigenous body of wisdom. Interestingly, the facts of Kea's spiritual biography that she disclosed in our online conversations somewhat contradicted to those that she included in her writings, especially about the starting point of her spiritual path. In one of her written recollections, she does not even mention her shamanic initiation, but refers to a much earlier dream vision. In 1987, I came across an article. It was indeed a strange instance, as I rarely read newspapers. It briefly told about the discovery of the traces of an ancient settlement, which unfolded by the close examination of the aerial photographs taken as part of the preparatory works for a dam system south of the Urals. These were supposed to be the remains of Archaim, Zoroaster's former city. A crystal clear image was unfolding in front of me, with circular ruins and narrow streets similar to ditches, converging towards a red square like the spokes of a wheel. A pillar of fire erupted from there, which turned into a snow-white ray of light. This was my first painting that I didn't sign, because I felt that I was merely a channel of something. As the account in the manuscript follows, sometimes around 2008 or 2009, Kaya attended a native faith gathering in Hungary, where she underwent a sweat lodge ceremony, and then she received the same vision. This time, she described it as a projection, which indicates that retrospectively, she interpreted her first visionary experience as if it had been destined personally for her and on purpose, like a message sent by an unknown supernatural force or entity in order to put her on a new trajectory. When elaborating the second vision, she disclosed several new facts. For example, she explained that she could only recognize the ancient city of Archaim by the light of a certain shining stone, which was brought in front of her by a step-rider. The stone suddenly fell on the ground in the very moment when the rider was collapsing dead, as she said. But Kaya picked it up and took it to her. She interprets it now that the stone represented the ancient Zoroastrian legacy, preserved by the steppe people, among them the ancient Hungarians, which was entrusted upon her this way. It hasn't been clear so far whether she took yage, the indigenous term she uses for the ayahuasca brew, or other hallucinogenic drugs before the second vision. What is sure, that she was speaking about it as an episode from a longer journey to the other world. The additional elements, and especially those referring to the ancient Hungarians and their alleged relationship with the Zoroastrian teachings, also the way of discovering this ancient knowledge, were clear references to the actual circumstances of the visionary experience, namely the so-called pagan Hungarian ritual. I assume that the incorporation of motifs widely shared among the sympathizers of native faiths in Hungary reflects Kaya's intention to introduce herself as a tradition bearer, simultaneously representing two indigenous heritages. These are South American shamanism on the one hand, and the alleged ancient Hungarian shamanistic religion on the other. In 2009, she went on a 4-month-long spiritual pilgrimage to Colombia again. Her destination was Mesa de los Santos, the former sacred site of the Guani people. She received several visions there. Similarly to Zita's diary of dreams that I mentioned before, Kaya kept notes about her visions, and she incorporated some of them into her first 2 books, her DLA thesis, and subsequently in her 4-volume oeuvre on shamanism. She exploited this rich repository of personal visionary experiences when she formulated the Manifesto of Concordancia Carpathiensis. She wrote in a vision account, "As soon as I arrived at my friend's place after the 4-month-long pilgrimage, I sat down by the computer as if obeying to an inexplicable urge. My mind projected 2 words onto the screen, Concordancia Carpathiensis, and I unconsciously typed them. Writing was easy and continuous, as if the text was dictated." So here we can see that automatic writing, a familiar attribute of spiritualist mediums, is a recurring element of in a vision account. In the above mentioned case, for example, Kaya was convinced that her writings were not only of her own, but they were partly of supernatural origin. This way, she acted as a channel. The declaration of the supernatural origins of the knowledge she conveys not only legitimates its content, but designates her intermediary status between the group and the otherworldly spheres she connects with. The 4 manuscripts, of which the first one was also published in 2007, are circulated among the members of the group, and she offers them to anyone's disposal who is interested. This way, her personal vision accounts contribute to the common set of beliefs and ideas shared by her community and her followers, and also the other circles she contacts with, such as some of the outstanding figures in the Hungarian native faith movement. The traffic of knowledge and ideas between her and the latter group, however, should be more thoroughly researched if on-site fieldwork will be possible again. As regards her manuscripts, so far I had the opportunity to observe the communications occasionally unfolding among the group members and the sympathizers of the followers in the field of the secondary orality of the internet. So in the social media platforms and in the messenger conversations. During the pandemic period, these sites served as the primary channels where Kaya could reach out the others. She has created the online platform in social media where she could contact with the group members and could also communicate her thoughts. She refuses to call them teachings anyway. The larger public, the religion online can be seen here. At the same time, a virtual cultic environment has been developed, which enabled the group to pursue various religious and spiritual activities online, such as rituals, blessings, and meditations. So this is the online religion. While acting as a religious leader empowered by supernatural knowledge, Kaya blends the role as the mediator and the channel, and she is carefully alternating them according to her intentions. In her inspiring monograph about London, a culture in the late 1980s, Tanya Luhrmann stresses the importance of imagination and emotions when one commits her or himself to magic. She not only observed the experiencing the supernatural world through dreams or visions, often paved the road at the end of which one got involved in the activities of magical groups, but took a step forward and examined how practitioners themselves understood and explained their conscious return to magical beliefs and participation in magical rituals. She found that their motivation was a search for powerful, emotional, and imaginative religious experience. In the early modern magical market, the popular experts of magic often boasted with the supernatural origins of their powers to advertise their services or to overcome their rivals. If we consider the ideological background of witchcraft accusations, it's obvious that present-day practitioners risk far less than their historical predecessors when they openly state that they regularly connect to the transcendent world and receive their abilities from there. Here one cannot overlook that these practices are thriving in a re-enchanted postmodern cultic milieu, what Christopher Partridge calls very aptly a culture, which is utterly different from the early modern social and cultural settings, but in which magic still plays a prominent role. We should also bear in mind Galina Lindqvist's observation that the contradiction between the secret origins of magical knowledge and its spread and visibility in the social and economic contexts of everyday life is only a seeming one, since in a culture, magical expertise has a market value and magic is indeed well sellable. The marketing strategies employed by the 2 Slovenian wise women, Anna and Christy, fit well in this pattern. They both have produced a considerable amount of literary works during the past decade, which can also be read as public declarations of their transcendent contacts. Both authors draw on their regular communications with the souls of the dead and the angelic realm, and thus they obviously base their credibility and authenticity upon the supernatural words they consult with. Their initiation narratives, in a somewhat stylized form, have become essential parts of their professional autobiographies, and as such, they obviously contribute to their legitimacy as spiritual teachers, counselors, and service providers. Christie describes herself as Niebieska pisateljica, heavenly writer, and Anna refers to her departed elder sister as the real author of her most recent book, Menschsein im Jetzt. During our first online conversation in March 2021, Anna also added that she received the vocation from the angelic realm first when she was a teenage girl in 1990, and later she often conveyed heavenly messages in the form of special drawings in order to support his father's activity. In a way, she acted as his private heavenly channel. In a print edition of Anna's angelic messages with a foreword by her father was published in 1989 in Germany. It's hard to neglect the coincidence between the boom of the new angel spirituality in America, its rapid emergence in Europe, and the publication of Anna's Angel's book. A similar conscious marketing of supernatural knowledge can be observed in Christie's case, who recounts her first encounter with the spirit world, a serial of visions and apparitions of the souls of the dead, in an interview which was published in a Slovenian online newspaper in the 2012, at the very beginning of her spiritual expertise. So here are some parts of it. When my mother was sick, I suddenly started hearing voices and knocking. I also saw the contours of a figure. I was insanely scared. First, I didn't tell anyone because they would think I was crazy. Then my boyfriend and my mom started to see the same things. When I once saw the contour of a man, I asked him what he wanted. He told me that he was my mother's late uncle and that he had to come to tell me that she had cancer. She had no diagnosis at that time, but she felt unwell. When my mom died, I looked for a medium myself because I couldn't connect with her. I started to deal with it professionally when the medium, Thea Mellins, confirmed that I also had these abilities. In my first seance, I didn't know how to do with the people. Suddenly, I heard a voice saying, "We know what should be done." During the seance, my soul was receiving the instructions and I managed. Even today, I only convey the messages from the spirit world. Here, a further remarkable motif appears in connection with the authenticity of the supernatural abilities. It lays not only in the heavenly origins, but also approved by expert authority, namely by another specialist of heavenly contact, who happens to be a well-known and authentic figure, Thea Mellins. In this talk, I presented some examples of how wise women, as outstanding personalities of present-day spirituality, create their identities by integrating and reinterpreting belief about supernatural knowledge. I found that traditional patterns, such as initiation by a master or transcendent entities like angel or the dead, connecting the other world in altered states of consciousness like in a dream or vision, or acquiring supernatural empowerment through illness, dominated in their stories. Beyond them, however, new meanings attached to these traditional motifs could also be observed. Let me highlight some of them. First of all, self-development should be mentioned, as it seems to be a central theme in many of these stories. It is represented by the simultaneous processes of gaining knowledge and getting healthy, both in a physical and in a spiritual sense. In Zita's case, for example, wisdom has been acquired by attending courses and seminars consecutively, while in Kaya's case, her step-by-step liberation from the so-called dark thought, the cleansing, and the physical sufferings, the getting rid of the physical sufferings during the course of multiple initiations could be this process. Secondly, I should highlight the transformation of the body and the self, and also the spirit, which is the firm basis of the new spiritual practice or the new vocation. Finally, the theme of various inexplicable sensory experiences, such as visions, hallucinations, heat, should be underlined. It is always stressed that all of these had taken place prior to the actual occasion of getting supernatural knowledge. It means that they gain significance only retrospectively in the light of the subsequent events. This conscious restructuring of the course of events appeared, for example, when Kaya was speaking about her recurring dream. Anna and Christy followed the same logic when they formulated their accounts of becoming heavenly mediators, namely the seers of the angels of the dead. But they mentioned the different kinds of experiences that were prior to their supernatural empowerment. Although it would be obviously an oversimplification if we considered these utterances on spiritual empowerment as merely a best-selling item in the present-day market economy of magical goods. By making their personal experiences public, these wise women have not only managed to find a business niche for their services, but they have successfully established a status in the spiritual milieu, from local networks through nationwide movement up to international relations. Thank you.